sit here, you know, you get an insight and you know something, you know, but you don't want to say it out loud because you're kind of afraid that it's not going to be really true and it'll spoil the whole thing for you, you know. But when somebody makes you say it, then, and it's true, then it just makes it more beautiful of a thing.
Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome back. It's week 3 of CGL season 13. We've got a matchup here between, two legacy teams here in the PCEU Open tier. We've got Sheer Cold versus Golira Esports. I am joined for this match by the incredible Megalast. How you feeling?
I'm, waking up a tad bit earlier than I'm used to, but hey, when you've got such a good game as this one, it's well worth it. Sheer Cold and Golira, both, teams that played last season of CGL. Sheer Cold, they've established themselves in, contenders when that was still a thing for the past few years. So this should be a really interesting game just to see how high level these teams really are right now.
And speaking of these teams, let's get a look at these lineups real quick. First up, we've got Sheer Cold with a core of the former champions, Grill Masters last season, Exodial, Will, NKZ, Yoam, and Straybor. A few of those players were the core of Grill Masters that won the EU PC Open tier last season. So Sheer Cold, they're coming into this season, week 3 now. They've got a strong team.
Absolutely. When you pick up a good core like that, it simply just makes you feel that much stronger to have championships behind you. But Golira on the other side, while they're not boasting those trophies just yet, they still have the talent to boot. Rift and Lukey Boy. Everybody remembers Rift from last season. If you watch those playoffs, absolute monster. JJPT on the tank, and of course, Ruler and Horrocks bringing up the support line. Some of these players still have a lot to prove with themselves, but you just kind of have to have that power about you, be able to do what you need to do, especially when you're going against such a Goliath like Sheer Cold right now, coming out of their first 2 weeks 6-0.
Don't you mean Rula?
Listen, we don't count British people's pronunciations here, even though this is an EU broadcast. We don't acknowledge it here. We do not pretend it exists.
1776, baby. Let's go. All right. So we do know what our map pool is going to be here for week number 3. We're going to start out in Nepal, then move to Kings Row, New Junk City, Colosseo, and map number 5, if necessary, is going to be Rialto? Rialto.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a very interesting map pool we have here for week 3. Of course, during the regular season, as you all know, map pool is pre-selected by the week. And Nepal, it's a very interesting cost map to start out on, right? You have sort of a bit of difference in what you can do on each of the points. You have Village, very much a bunker down, get together, hold together on the point, typically with some sort of May variation in there. But going to the other 2 points, Fletch, there's a lot of room to kind of be mobile and move around.
Yeah. I mean, Nepal, it's a really interesting map, right? I mean, this patch is so young, right? This is this game-changing patch that I've decided to call Overwatch 3. It's so young, so new. Everybody's still figuring out, and we've got another patch coming up today. I think in a couple of hours to get some nerfs, get some changes in. But like you said, we're gonna start out here on Village, the more brawly of the 3 points. And I'm interested to see what these teams are going to come out with here in this young patch.
Absolutely. There's been a lot of discussion, about where this meta truly can be heading. As the stabilization of the last week has occurred, there's been talks of heroes like Junker Queen rising to the top with some sort of rush composition there. Meanwhile, on the other side of things, a lot of Wrecking Ball, Winston, things of that nature have been talked about, where it's just a fast-paced dive, almost like when Kiriko was initially released at the beginning of Overwatch 2. Kind of creates interesting situations, but here at the start, we're seeing Golira run out on what I would consider a standard composition. This Reinhardt with the Mei and the Symmetra, get into point and stay there is going to be the goal. But Sheer Cold, they're looking to pivot onto some sort of dive here, but it's with the Diva instead of a Winston.
Yeah, a little bit of zombie comp action here from Overwatch 1. I guess we'll see how this is going to go as we get into this first point. JJPT trying to keep that shield up, breaking the hack as NKZ absolutely rains hell with these shotguns on the Diva. But walled off from the point is Sheer Cold, and Golira, they're going to find this first flip, but still, though, nobody has gone down yet. JJPT takes so much damage. Ruler, though, able to just barely keep their Reinhardt up and kicking. And Ruler and Horrocks, they've got their ultimates as NKZ pinned right into the wall, gets demech'd, and, the Pulse Bomb comes out from Exodial, but Ruler's Immortality Field is going to be able to comfortably cancel that out, and Golira is going to be able to ward off, at least for now, Sheer Cold's attack.
Yes, indeed, and Ruler being an absolute hero there, keeping the Reinhardt up through all of that, dedicating the Amplification Matrix, making sure the value is found, but not before this happens.
My God, Exodial showing off that championship DNA, even a little bit better now with the changes in the hitboxes, and the EMP only hits Lukey Boy, and Will at 30 HP is able to stay alive, and Lukey Boy on the point alone, gonna sit in the corner. It will be Sheer Cold bringing this fight out here.
Yes, indeed, and the mistake Golira made there was they left the point, right? Their composition is built to be on the point. You have the Mei wall, which can perfectly zone off one of those two doors. That way you only have to focus one way at a time. And when you give up sort of that control of the map, it creates just such a rough fight for you. But now they're going to be able to TP back in close to this Earth Shatter.
Yeah, speaking of fighting on the point, I think they're going to go ahead and take your advice, but NKZ, fine pace into the wall, goes Rifted Ruler, but the shatter from JJPT is colossal. Pulse Bomb's going to come out. They're going to be able to take down the Reinhardt. It's Exodial and NKZ, but NKZ is below a quarter HP, and Exodial is alone, cannot do it by themselves. Has recall ready to go, but can they get rid of the Tracer in Exodial? They can't. Yoam is able to come back and burn it down. Horrocks, the pin comes through, but Yoam is going to work. Straybor moves down Lukey Boy, and despite JJPT finding the Fire Strike onto Yoam, Sheer Cold, by sheer force of will, bring that out.
Yeah, Sheer Cold had absolutely no right winning that one, but, the Tracer was able to persist, and while Golira was able to get some point presence going, unfortunately, just wasn't enough to be able to withstand the storm. Now they're pivoting over to a dive comp of their own, showing the Winston, but also the Genji pick here, which means they're going to want to have to go fast onto a target. If you take too long, this Winston will get blown up. It's just the nature of the game right now.
And power punch up for NKZ. Straybor able to boop the Winston off the high ground, but NKZ got a little overzealous there. Burned down with the Coalescence, and Exodial cleans up JJPT. Sheer Cold are still well within this fight despite losing NKZ early. Because they were able to take down JJPT, they might very well just bring out Village right here.
Yes, indeed, it's going to have to be almost a last-minute touch from one of the members of Golira, but you're seeing how well they're tracking them, right? They know where the Lucio is playing. Golira doesn't even have an ult to their name. Meanwhile, this Pulse Bomb in the hands of Zotl should be able to end this one if it's stuck to the right target.
Lukey Boy able to get in onto the point. Recall forced out by Exodial, but NKZ drops Horrocks, and Exodial throws out the Pulse Bomb onto JJPT and cleans up the damage on their own. And Sheer Cold, winning a few fights they had no right winning, able to just force Village into their own hands.
Absolutely, and Golira, they had the right idea at the start with that Reinhardt composition, right? This is a point where we talked about it, being able to bunker down with the Mei is super, super effective, but eventually they got picked apart. They weren't able to clean up these fights. This fight, they killed 3. They were in a 3-2 advantage, but they just allowed this Tracer to persist, and when you allow that to happen, it just creates situations where it's unwinnable regardless of how well you do. Now it looks like we're pivoting over to the Sanctum here. The Pit obviously going to be a looming threat with this Lucio buff that came in this patch for both of these teams, but Sheer Cold opting out of the Lucio instead going with a standard poke of the Zen Baptiste Sigma.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people are singing the praises of Zenyatta right now. So I'm not surprised. It's a very, very strong poke comp that Sheer Cold have pulled out. And now Horrocks trying to boop the enemies into the fight. And Exodial on the off angle is able to rip Lukey Boy's head off. And just like that, I mean, Sheer Cold, they're just going to push Golira over.
Yes, indeed. And this comes from sort of the difference in comps, right? Both walked out on a version of Poke, but without that Zenyatta, without that Discord Orb, there's just simply nothing you can do. There's not enough damage from the rest of the comp to be able to make something work. So Golira gonna go ahead, revert to Monkey just like their name, but you can't do it when the Hanzo's getting picks like that. Jeez Louise.
Exodial once again clearing Lukey Boy's head from his shoulders. So now Golira, they're really uncomfortable as NKZ just continues to put these hyperspheres to work. The dive is going to come through from JJPT, but there's still an accretion in the pocket for NKZ, but Exodial with a couple there, once again taking down Lukey Boy, and there you see Zenyatta comfortably 1v1ing the Genji, and I mean, Golira just cannot get in.
They can't get in because Lukey Boy, no offense, has been put on a respawn timer to all hell and back. It's just every single time they seem to come out of spawn, there's just going to be a Hanzo arrow waiting for their skull, and you're seeing the space be created by the rest of Sheer Cold here. The presence they're simply exuding is making it so hard for Golira to get in, but they seem to finally be able to make their way in here now.
Golira staring down the barrel of a 65 and counting percentage deficit. They have not built up an ultimate here on Sanctum as Will in the backline throws out the duplicate. Can they find anything with it? No, it looks like they're going to be able to get out somehow as the Amp Matrix comes out from Yoam, and Will in the backline is able to burn it down Rift with the focusing beam, and I mean, it's just all blue in the kill feed right now as once again Exodial comes alive late to put Nepal away.
Yeah, that was absolutely brutal. That first round, very close. You could see there was a set strategy, but, you know, they were almost overwhelmed by what Sheer Cold was doing. They couldn't find an answer. I mean, that Echo sat in their spawn for the better half of Sanctum there, and like there was attempts to peel for it, but instead of actually following it up and trying to kill the Echo, they just simply allowed her to persist, allowed her to stay back there, and you can't ever let that happen. So Golira, they've got to get better on that focus fire. They've got to be able to sort of tighten those screws, because otherwise you're just going to see another Sheer Cold 3-0 stomp here.
Yeah, and like I don't want to harp on any player in particular, but I feel like if you're Lukey Boy, right, you have to adapt, because Exodial just had Lukey Boy's number, like right there. I mean, 3, 4, 5 kills onto Lukey Boy from Exodial on Sanctum. I mean, if you're Golira, you gotta pivot, I feel like, because what you're doing just isn't working. I mean, I liked the idea that they had on Village, right? I really did, but once they got to where they were trying to get into that poke mirror, I mean, it felt like they didn't have the same confidence that they did. So they fell apart.
Yeah, and I mean, it's weird, right? Because they did attempt the poke mirror at the start of that second round, but it was not the full poke composition. They opted for the Lucio instead of the Zenyatta, and it just sort of, you know, immediately that's less damage. Sure, you have more mobility, but if you're not taking advantage of that in some meaningful way, then there's nothing you can really do. You know, and then when they pivoted over to the dive on Sanctum is going to be rough if you can't get through that initial choke, which is exactly what happened. They weren't able to sort of concentrate their dive anywhere, and they ultimately just watched their time bank whittle away. But, you know, you got to look forward in these sort of situations, and looking forward is going to be King's Row, a map more known for the rush compositions and not with as many brutal chokes, right? Obviously, the one that comes to mind is the large arch after you leave point A, but outside of that, it really is just positioning in the streets phase, as well as, when you get to that third point, that really can be taken advantage of by either team. So potentially a bit more familiar, a bit more sound of mind for Golira here, but sheer cold. I mean, you see why this team has a core that won last season. You see why this team hasn't dropped a map yet. They are truly on another level.
Yeah, and going into this map, right, we're going to see a substitution out from sheer cold, right? So Straybor is going to come out, Ilpy in on the support. And I wonder if that's because Straybor is, they wanted to run the Zenyatta there, and, they drew the unlucky, in quotations, the unlucky map in Village first, where Straybor had to run down on the Lucio. But I wonder if they're just going to run the rush here with Ilpy on the Lucio as their dedicated Lucio player, where Straybor, they wanted to play the Zenyatta because Zen is so strong right now. But, we'll see in a couple of seconds if that's what the play is going to be. No, Ilpy is actually the Zenyatta player, it appears.
I mean, yeah, potentially going towards this full poke composition. A lot of people hinting that the meta might be going this way, barring whatever Zenyatta nerfs are coming in the next 2 hours, which, that's obviously something to consider, but not something you have to worry about for the moment here. Very interesting DPS to pair with the poke composition, though. You're going for the Echo Tracer, both sort of solo agents, and while they can do a lot of poking and prodding, normally you expect some sort of hit scam pressure, something like a Sojourn, even a Widowmaker just sort of create pressure. But on the other side of things, Golira, they're going to want to run it back on this dive composition, which means they're going to want to find the Zenyatta, and they're going to have to do it quickly, right? With Winston in this patch, you truly have about 2 seconds to execute a dive before you could get blown up.
And here we go, Golira. They want this Winston, and they want it bad, so they're going to try and run it down as Lukey Boy is way behind right now, and NKZ just able to drop the Genji, and it seems like Yom and Ilpy have an idea, and just like that, Lukey Boy gets caught out and pushed away by the Discord Orb, and Golira is in the hotel right now. I'm not really sure if they have a clear plan without Rift, and Lukey Boy is being kept at bay on the Tracer in the backline. Discord Orb out onto JJPT as Lukey Boy is able to drop Ilpy, but Exodial is there for the trade out. Exodial able to take down Ruler, and Lukey Boy follows in suit as Yoam got a couple there himself. So sheer cold looking strong so far.
And this is how powerful poke can be, right? You're seeing everyone pretty much play a stoic set of positions, but also be able to peel for each other. Nobody is truly isolated despite appearing that way, This Sigma looks tantalizing. It's up here alone by itself, but the Baptiste healing is there. The damage is coming from every angle. And Golira, they've got to find some sort of way. Walking through a staircase straight into the team is not what you want.
Especially when you've got the Sigma just bearing down on you with those hyperspheres. Lukey Boy tries to get something done as the duplicate comes out from Will. Horrocks so low and zapped down to death by Will. As I mean, this plan is just not going the way Golira wants it to go.
Yes, indeed, and it's so odd because they're not really executing on a dive. They're executing on getting into, the lower area of this hotel, which, granted, they're getting there every single time. They're not getting poked out that much getting into there, but once they're there, it's a dive comp, and there's a roof on the ceiling. You're trapped. Now it seems like they're going to want to try to force point here, but everybody's just doing damage.
Pulse Bomb out. JJPT able to sidestep it briefly there as Ilpy is able to drop Horrocks down. Lukey Boy able to find the Pulse Bomb onto Will. Now the battle ensues with Exodial up on the high ground as the Gravitic Flux comes out, able to get cleansed there. And I mean, it does look like both players on that high ground are gonna go down as Horrocks is just, chilling out on the wall, taken down by Ilpy as, I mean, Golira, it feels like they're running like a rush brawl comp with a Winston.
Yeah, they're playing it in such an odd fashion here. And, you sort of think, okay, even if everything is going wrong, their ultimates can work out for them, right? This Blade is going to get immediately countered by the Transcendence unless they can find a way for Ilpy to make a mistake here.
But Rift so low right now, and there's going to be the sound barrier by Golira as the Dragon Blade comes out. Ilpi immediately drops down. Can they take down Will? They can't, as Will gets off the duplicate. Yoam is able to burn down Horrocks after the damage by Will is done, and JJPT is able to juggle Will or Ilpi into the wall there, but I mean, I just can't help but think it's not enough.
Yeah, I'm thinking that this dive composition. Yeah, this dive composition just was not the answer here. As the time starting to tick out, it's going to be a last-minute touch, if anything, coming through.
I mean, it'll be a touch, but the pulse bomb out onto JJPT. I don't know anymore. I feel like I just don't know what to say. I mean, Golira is gonna falter here. I mean,
they allowed Poke to do what it does best. It poked them out. It brought down the damage little by little until there was that go button for Sheer Cold, ultimately normally being executed on by either this Tracer or Echo. And you know, that's always the fear when you're running into Poke. You have to be able to out-tempo it. The more time you give to a Poke composition, the better that they're going to be, always. And there's never a time where it's like, oh, give them a moment and we'll be the better end of it. It's just not possible with the way the composition is formatted. So, Golira, they've got to go back to the drawing boards. I don't think this dive is what they're going to be looking for, you know, heading forward, not just through the rest of this map, the rest of this series. If they want to have any chance to try to stay in it, they've got to be able to figure something out, because, you know, you're seeing good mechanics, right? The juggle on the Zenyatta there, as well as there's key pickups coming from Lukey Boy every now and then. Like, the mechanics are there for this team. It's just they're not executing on it well.
I gotta think, right? So we're gonna see Golira play a more pokey. I'm just confused. I don't understand what Golira is trying to do right now.
This because to me, it feels like Horrocks either is not comfortable or simply does not have the Zen in the wheelhouse, because Zen is, you know, the key factor of Poke always, forever and always. And Horrocks constantly sticking on this Lucio, maybe just a comfort pick, but unfortunately just not what's required right here.
There we go. NKZ putting the pressure onto the point there. Now, I mean, just being an annoying little guy right now. NKZ on the not the Winston, but the Wrecking Ball. Different W name is. Can Lukey Boy take out NKZ here? Not quite. As the point begins to tick up for Sheer Cold, it'll be a trade of flex supports here. Horrocks just explodes there with the help of the focusing beam from Will, and more than likely that's going to do it, as it's just Lukey Boy on the point as Exodio pops 3 to clean it up. And I mean, Sheer Cold right now, they know what they want to do, and Golira just doesn't. I mean, it feels like they're playing as two different teams, right? They want to. It feels like they want to run something more rushy or not rushy, but brawly and slow, right? But then they're on dive characters. They're on Winston. They're on Tracer. They're on Genji. Like, what they're doing does not match with the composition that they're running. They're just too slow.
Yeah, I mean, I could absolutely agree with you. It kind of hits the nail on the head here. Potentially, you know, sort of getting into their own heads about, you know, what's meta and what's not, right? Whether they should go over to these rush comps where people aren't as confident in them, or maybe that's just the playstyle that they've sort of grown accustomed to, that they might feel they're the best at. You know, it's really hard to tell, but when you have a team like Sheer Gold bearing down your throat, they're multifaceted, they can flex to any composition, they have the people to play whatever they want. You know, you can't let them play their game. You have to be able to sort of zone back in, realize what you want to do, and even if it's not the most optimal thing, you still just got to do it and just see what results you can get.
Yeah, I mean, right now, Sheer Cold, they just have an iron grip over this series right now. And we're going to cut it to a break here. And when we come back, we'll see if they can just ice out Golira. So stick around and we'll see if Golira can respond. All right, welcome back, everybody. Right now, Sheer Cold, they're dominating. Uh, right, it just seems like Golira doesn't have an idea of what they want to do, and Sheer Cold, I mean, any plan is better than no plan, but Sheer Cold has a good plan going.
Yes, indeed. I mean, Cold, you're seeing why the core of this team is so good, why they won last time, why this is an established team, you know? They have that power behind them. They have the baseline knowledge in all of these comps so they can pivot on a whim. And, Golira, they're just kind of looking for some sort of identity. They're sort of stuck in these weird fusion comps where we're playing a Lucio with poke, or we're, diving, but we're not really able to go anywhere with it. So it just feels very off. But, heading into Flashpoint, this is a mode where, regardless of the meta, it seems like Lucio's always been a required factor. Being able to sort of move in and out as you please and making sure you rotate with the whole team, it sort of can give you that advantage you need to sort of maybe potentially build the start to a reverse sweep, sort of come back into this one.
Speaking of Lucio, take what I said at the beginning of King's Row, just reverse it. We got Straybor coming back in to play the Lucio here, and Ilpi's still going to remain on the flex support, I imagine. Maybe the Zenyatta. I could definitely see that coming back in here, but yeah, I think that Sheer Cold, they've got, I mean, they're on a roll right now. This is a very good team with incredible pedigree, several champions of CGL. I mean, right now, I think we're just seeing experience versus inexperience. I think a lot of this Golira team, they didn't play together before, and the core of Sheer Cold not only has played together, but they've played at the highest level of CGL, and I think that we're just seeing that the difference between them.
Yes, indeed. But I mean, even when you're up against such a gargantuan opponent, right? Even if you don't walk away with the win, there has to be that moment of digging your heels in the sand, right? There has to be that moment of saying, we may not have won, but if you can make even a single map look close, that's something you can study, you can look back on. Because of how good of a team Sheer Cold is, it gives you that opportunity to just sort of, be able to workshop from there. So you gotta put on some level of performance here if you're Golira, even if this is going to be your last map, which it very well could be. But New Junk City offers a lot of different things on Flashpoint here, and we're going to see both teams coming out with variations of Rush. You're seeing Sheer Cold rock what is the standard Junker Queen composition now, the Moira, the Lucio, the Genji, all just going to be peppering in damage as quick as you like. Meanwhile, Golira, it seems like it was just a Tracer TP out of spawn to get the Ramatra moving, and now we're also going to see the Soldier 76 paired with it.
Soldier 76, haven't seen a lot of him today, but with the buff to the projectiles, he's crazy. Mm-hmm. I mean, he can be a very, very strong asset in any composition here, and hopefully Rift can get something done with it, as Horrocks is now under pressure, gets the regen burst from Ruler, who is in turn now under pressure, but it'll be a trade. It'll be for Rift and Straybor for JJPT. Exodial has to use the recall, but is able to burn down Ruler, and death by 1,000 cuts. It feels like Golira is just able to get the flip here.
Yeah, and it's absolutely, one of those things where being able to start off at the point is massive, but it is going to go to Sheer Cold in the end here, as you're seeing the Lucio skate away with their life. But Golira should be able to re-engage pretty fast here. As long as those Ramatra punches come out right, they can burst the target pretty good.
Horrocks got a little too overzealous there, unfortunately. Gets caught out by Will, who is going to get burned down by Ruler there. The grasp there is going to be too much for Will to deal with, as, Carnage is going to whiff a little bit there, but NKZ doesn't care. Going to clean up Ruler and push out Golira once again.
Yeah, and that's the downside to losing your Lucio, right? Ramatra and Moira don't have a whole heck of a lot of mobility outside of Moira's Fade ability, so having to slowly move forward here as NKZ is pushing the spawn here, super aggressive.
Shout comes out early by NKZ, and Exodial very, very low, but doesn't even care. Is able to burn down Horrocks, and Golira is going to deny a little bit of this point percentage, right? But I think just at the end of the day, it's not really going to matter as Lukey Boy is all alone.
Yeah, you send the Tracer to go cap the point, a phenomenal idea in theory, but it left you vulnerable to the 4v5. You know, if you were there as a team, you probably could have won that fight. You forced Shout out early, you forced the speed, and, you know, they weren't able to move all too much, but Sheer Cold will be taking our first point here, heading on over to wherever our second one may be. The good thing for Golira is they at least have a significant ult advantage for coming up on all 5 of them should be online here, and if they can't make something work with that, then I think something's fundamentally broken.
Here we go. Refinery for point number 2 here on New Junk City. NKZ has a Rampage, gonna throw it out immediately. Tactical Visor in response from Rift, but I mean, it's just not enough as Horrocks could not build up to the sound barrier to save Golira from the Rampage, and Sheer Cold, you know, one ult or a couple ults in, they just take it easy.
Yes, indeed. So now, you know, got to keep looking on the upside, right? Golira, Horrocks will now have this sound barrier online for Will's Blade, so this Genji Blade should be able to be negated pretty well. Rift heading over to the Reaper now instead of the Soldier allows him to be in the fight with his team more, but I'm going to be honest, the Reaper's a little bit rough, even with this increased pellet size.
Here we go. I mean, it's a great response from Horrocks to keep the team alive. Will could have found something there if not for it, but JJPT pummels down Will and Exodio to clean it up, and Refinery goes over to Golira for the first time.
Yes, indeed. And, you know, beautiful sort of disengage there, right? They wanted to chase the Lucio out, acknowledging that when enough is enough, they can't follow those kills out anymore. They have to be able to play their positions. Smart little adaptation coming through from Golira. And now you're seeing Sheer Gold actually being forced to swap to, you know, meet their opponent here. Will over to the Mei and NKZ meeting the Ramatra duel here. Meanwhile, the Annihilation's still going to be online for JJP.
Will be so close to the Coalescence here. Gonna see the Annihilation used by JJPT. Can they find any more with it? They can't do anything. Lukey Boy is just going to be able to find Straybor, but that's all that they're going to be able to get here as Golira falls over.
And it was just, whether it was unaware or not, just JJP waiting too long. The Moira Coalescence was able to be built by Ilpi, keeping everybody nice and healthy throughout that fight, and it just creates such a rough situation because you almost wish you could have that ult back not knowing, but, you know, heading up towards what's going to be another 99% fight here, it's going to be a desperate touch from somebody, and potentially this Pulse Bomb could turn the tide for Golira.
Lukey Boy gets the touch. Pulse Bomb not going to quite find Straybor there. The touch comes through, but NKZ is hurting real bad, but the Annihilation going to be able to find Rift. They're able to take down NKZ, but I mean, the rest of Sheer Cold, they are cool under pressure, and they're going to be able to push Golira out of the Refinery. They are at map point, match point here.
Yes, indeed. And, you know, Golira, it feels like maybe potentially a misplacing of that focus fire. Sure, in the end, you were able to take down NKZ, you were able to burn that Ramatra, but there were still 2 other healers, 2 DPS that were constantly peppering you, trying to keep that Ramatra up as well. And it shows, you know, when you leave these targets alive, it just creates a problem, but you're seeing exactly what happens when you take a Moira out of the fight. It's just wraps already for Golira on this one.
Yeah, I mean, that's all of Golira's healing, pretty much. I mean, that's all that Moira can do. So, you know, you just push him out with the use of a Pulse Bomb. Just an easy flip.
Easy flip, nice and peaceful. And, you start looking towards these next few fights here, and Sheer Cold have themselves set up in a position to just win it outright. They have the Blizzard. As long as it's thrown in on top of somebody, like the Ramatra, it should be a nice, clean, guarantee fight win for them.
And Rift finds something with this Death Blossom. Have to use the Wraith to get out of the Blizzard, but JJPT is gone. I mean, the Blizzard is able to put JJPT down, and Golira just throws himself off the map.
Yeah, because you're going to be what is at final fight here unless you're able to turn the tide and win it. The upside, you kept that Death Blossom, right? So you've burned the Sound Barrier, you've burned the Coalescence. There's nothing to stop this Death Blossom from doing work besides its positioning and its placement. But you're seeing Sheer Cold, they're playing up because they don't want this fight to go anywhere close to the point.
Annihilation from JJPT followed up by Ruler. The Death Blossom may not even need to come out here. So a great investment of the Coalescence and the Annihilation is going to lead to Golira taking over here.
Yes, indeed. But again, this Tracer tool, Exidol, just doing absolute work on it. Lukey Boy has not had the best go of it this series here. Oh. And Horrocks also being caught out. That's going to be disastrous here because Sheer Cold, they're going to smell the blood in the water and they're going to book it to this point.
Here we go. Straybor trying to jump on top of Lukey Boy. Pulse Bomb is out. Not going to find a target here. Lukey Boy has one of their own, and Rift with the Death Blossom. Lukey Boy is able to drop down and get the Pulse Bomb onto Exodial, which is colossal as Lukey Boy finds 3 for Lukey Boy. Annihilation out from NKZ. Can they finish it right now? Straybor wants to get it done badly. They just want to get out of this series. Takes down a couple himself. Exodial cleans up Ruler, and at 95%, Lukey Boy is going to be able to take down Straybor. So this fight is so far from over as Rift has to use the Wraith form to get in, pummeled down by NKZ. 99% for Golira. Pulse Bomb out from Lukey Boy, but Lukey Boy goes down to the Coalescence, and Sheer Cold by the skin of their teeth are going to bring this out as Horrocks falls over to clean it up. Golira cannot get the reverse sweep on New Junk City, and they cannot get the reverse sweep in this series. Sheer Cold, they dominate.
Yeah, Lukey Boy, I was starting to think somehow heard me and got the Caster Curse of a lifetime, bringing that fight so desperately close for Golira. But again, you're seeing Sheer Cold when there's 2 members alive. That doesn't mean the fight is over for them. They're willing to invest. They're willing to, dig in and make sure that they can take it back by whatever means necessary there. And you saw it, at the end of the day, Straybor in that one fight, just being able to pick up frags on the Lucio, super massive, but it's just absolute clean play from Sheer Cold here. They're going up to 3-0 now on the regular season with a perfect 9-0, no maps dropped. And, Golira, they've got, stuff to go back to the drawing board with. They've got to figure out sort of what identity they want to rock with moving forward, Getting some fundamentals down on some of these important meta comps is always going to be helpful, but they've got to start somewhere.
Yeah. Like you said, they don't have an identity, right? They were running a Rush Brawl dive comp on King's Row where they wanted to play slow and try and, chip down, but they're on a dive comp. You can't go slow, chip down. We saw on New Junk City, they ran the Rush comp with the Ramatra, but it still felt like in those fights, right, they had people that were alone. And we saw that Horrocks and, the patented aggression that Horrocks plays Lucio with, it costed them because they were not playing around that aggression. So either, Horrocks needs to curb the aggression, or Golira needs to play more into it, be more aggressive, because they were the opposite. They were so passive for every single map after Village on Nepal. They could not do a thing because they played the game at a snail's pace compared to Sheer Cold.
Yeah, and I mean, sometimes that can come down to in the moment when you're face to face with an opponent of that caliber, right? You get cold feet, but you talked about it just there on Village. It was a pretty close thing. They had an identity. They knew what they wanted to do. As soon as they pivoted off of, what they were comfortable on, sure, it got a little bit hazy, but there is something there, right? There is talent and synergy in this roster. I feel like they just got to be able to tap into it more. But again, Sheer Cold, absolutely in a league of their own, I'd say right now. Still early in the season, but definitely some favorites to see at the end of it all. But I mean, just what a phenomenal 3-0 from them.
Yeah, speaking of early in the season, isn't it crazy? There's 2 weeks until our mid-season tournament.
That is crazy.
Yeah, we're almost halfway through. I mean that's crazy. Yeah, I mean, Sheer Cold. I gotta say they're probably one of the favorites right now, if not like leagues above everybody else. I mean, Sheer Cold is that good. There's a reason that these players are known as the guys they are, right? They have the history. They have the past dominance because Grill Masters was just as dominant last season. They were ridiculously strong last season. And then moving into the Sheer Cold name, I mean, it's a different name, but I mean, it's the same dominance. Sheer Cold, they know what they want to do, and they know how they want to do it, and they're decisive when they do it.
Yeah, it's exactly why they've been so dominant. But in order to see more of their domination, I think we are going to have to wait till next time. So, it has been fun here at CGL. We might have some matches later today on the NA side. I'm not completely sure if we've booked out people for that, but I mean,
yeah, maybe.
It's always going to be interesting to see if we have people, but I'd like to thank everybody for watching this phenomenal broadcast. Of course, we have myself and Fletch here on the cast, but we have some lovely people behind the scenes, our producers, our observers that make it all work. Make sure you show them all the love in the world. But that'll be the end for today. We'll see you all next time. Bye-bye.